Relationships in the workplace can be tricky. In a setting that's highly sexualized, where the alcohol is flowing, people are dressed in a sexy manner, and there's music blaring, where do we draw the line on inappropriate professional behavior? What constitutes unacceptable behavior? Where are the boundaries? What happens when coworkers become intimately involved or when a supervisor is involved with a subordinate? To the members of the USBG, I'm Elaine Pasqua, CSP. I'm here to help you create a workplace where healthy and respectful relationships are paramount. You want an establishment where people feel comfortable, whether it's your staff or your customers. When members of your staff are comfortable, they will be more productive. They'll be free of those distractions that interfere with productivity. It causes way too much drama and leads to a higher turnover. With a higher turnover comes the cost of increased training. Experienced staff increases your profits and keeps customers coming back as they develop relationships with them. Who doesn't want to make more money? Customers pick up on tension between members of your staff. If your staff is happy, they will treat your customers well, and there is your return business. You want them coming back for more. As a victim of sexual harassment on way too many occasions, I can honestly say that it is not fun. I can present a whole program on just my stories alone. For most victims of sexual harassment, we experience humiliation or intimidation because someone has made us feel that our physical attributes, our bodies, are the main value of what we bring to the workplace. It undermines any skills, talent, insights, or hard work that we bring to the table. We want you to create a culture of zero tolerance in your establishment. It's also important to think about the liability that you can incur. I know that there are better things that you can do with your money. One bad employee can change the workplace culture and tarnish your reputation for a long time. Do you know that more sexual harassment claims in this country are filed in the restaurant and drink industry than any other? 90% of women reportedly experience some form of sexual harassment. Men experience it as well, but not at the same rate. 2/3 have been harassed by a restaurant owner, manager, or supervisor. Standing alone, the alcohol industry may be even worse than the restaurant world. Although there are no sexual harassment statistics for this industry overall, the culture of free-flowing wine and liquor is known anecdotally to spur bad judgment. An attorney from the Bay Area once stated, "A lot of my sexual harassment complaints are alcohol-fueled. There's no question about it. I would say 60% of the complaints I get wouldn't have happened if there hadn't been drinking." Why are these employees more susceptible to sexual harassment? Men make up the majority of management and higher-paying roles in this industry. This difference in power creates an environment where sexual harassment is tolerated, ignored, or normalized because employees don't feel comfortable confronting others about their inappropriate behavior. The industry's high turnover rate, which is 70% annually, can contribute to this culture, as the victims of harassment are likely to leave before making any complaints. We also see bartenders who travel from one establishment to another. If they are victimized, they are not going to report this behavior because they are moving on. Let's talk about sexual harassment. So what exactly is it? According to the Equality Act of 2010, sexual harassment is unwanted conduct of a sexual nature which has the purpose or effect of violating someone's dignity or creating an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment. It is severe and pervasive in nature, and it can be perpetrated physically, verbally, or visually. You want everyone to feel comfortable in your establishment. Sexual harassment can be perpetrated from coworkers, supervisors, or customers. It can be perpetrated from male to female to male, male to male, or female to female. Statistically, it's perpetrated more often from male to female. The belief system of male dominance And privilege in this country has created a culture where men were raised and socialized to believe that women and girls are unequal to men and boys, and that they are nothing more than mothers, lovers, or sexual objects, and that it's okay to call them names, to touch them without their permission, to be violent towards them physically or emotionally. So let's talk about verbal harassment first. This occurs in a wide range of behaviors. I'll share some examples with you. An employee can ask a coworker out. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but when it's done repeatedly after a refusal, it can make that coworker feel uncomfortable. That's considered to be severe and pervasive behavior. So exactly what is severe and pervasive behavior? The law doesn't prohibit isolated or single incidents that are not very serious. Harassment is illegal when it is so frequent or severe that it creates a hostile or offensive work environment, where the person feels so uncomfortable that their work suffers or they want to leave. Perhaps a supervisor asks a subordinate out and is turned down. Asking someone out and moving on, treating them as you did before, is okay. But when that refusal results in the victim being fired, demoted, or given a shitty schedule, that's a hostile work environment. Although a single unwanted request for a date or one sexually suggestive comment might be offensive or be inappropriate, it may not be sexual harassment. Again, the number of relatively minor separate incidents may add up to a sexual harassment if the incidents affect the work environment. Here are some points to determine whether the conduct is pervasive. How many times did the incidents occur? How long has the harassment been going on? Again, when it's happening over a period of time, that's a problem. How many other people were also sexually harassed? Verbal harassment can sound like lewd remarks. It can be commenting on somebody's clothing, cleavage, ass, or lump in their pants. Hey, baby, nice ass. We have a friend who is constantly making lewd remarks to much younger women, and it makes them feel really uncomfortable. Hey, you're filling out those shorts quite nicely. Not only is it uncomfortable and creepy for the women, you should see how pissed off their boyfriends get. I have talked to this guy several times about his behavior, telling him how uncomfortable it makes people feel. He's oblivious. He thinks he's complimenting them. An employee or a supervisor can be sharing a suggestive sexual story or talking about their own sexual exploitations from the night or the weekend before. Not everybody is comfortable and wants to listen to that. Now, I grew up in New Jersey. My husband has classically stated that I make sailors blush. The F-bomb in our state was a noun, a pronoun, verb, and an adjective. I'm tough, and I can take this behavior better than most. But we have to remember that people come from different parts of the country, and they have different values. Some are more conservative than others, and are not comfortable with explicit stories or language. In fact, as a professional speaker who works all over the country, I have learned the hard way that I have to leave my Jersey girl behind. Other forms of verbal harassment: crude sexual remarks or telling sexual or sex-based jokes. Now, this is where it's important to get to know your coworkers well. Some might love those jokes, but there could be just one person that is not comfortable. You have to respect their feelings. You can quietly tell those jokes to a coworker who enjoys them, but make sure it is out of listening range for those who are offended. Sexist comments where we generalize about gender are offensive to many. Oh, you're another dumb blonde, or men are pigs. Attempting to discuss sex is an issue for many as well. Some others, sexual innuendos can make some feel uncomfortable, or telling rumors about a person's personal or sexual life. Threatening a person is also a form of verbal harassment. And lastly, let's talk about coercion. This is when somebody is verbally forcing a person into a sexual act through intimidation. If you don't give me a blowjob, I'm not going to give you that weekend off that you asked for to attend your friend's wedding. Or I won't give you a ride home. It could also be in the form of verbally forcing or intimidating someone into staying late to drink or snort coke after work when they express that they just want to go home and they're not interested. All of this boils down to respecting a person and their wishes. No means no, whether it's sexual or other forms of intimidation. Once a person says no, immediately respect it and back off. Now, let's look at verbal harassment. One example, someone is looking a person up and down another person's body, treating them like a sexual object, making them feel uncomfortable. I hated back in the day when I would walk into a bar and the guys would immediately glare at me like I was a piece of meat. I often said, they don't know me. I could be the biggest bitch in the world, but they're judging me solely on my looks. I hated it. I also remember when I had been introduced to a particular man and their eyes immediately went to my breast rather than looking me in the eyes. Or the guys who never looked you in the eyes when they spoke to you. Their eyes were always on the breast. It's not fun. Another form of nonverbal harassment is making derogatory gestures or facial expressions of a sexual nature. Following or stalking a person is also a form of sexual harassment, especially when it makes a reasonable person feel uncomfortable. Stalking can be physically following someone, or it can be through texting or emails. Now, what does physical harassment look like? It could be a person trapping an individual, perhaps in a back room or a walk-in refrigerator. A person could impede or block the movement of another in a narrow space. Grabbing a person's body parts without their permission is way too common. I've had my ass grabbed in bars way too many times. If someone puts their hand on another's shoulder once or twice, that's not harassment. But when it's done on a repeated basis, making the other person feel uncomfortable, that is severe and pervasive. Other examples of physical harassment: patting, stroking, inappropriately touching their clothing. I know of a woman who was working in a bar, and a couple of buttons on the back of her dress became unbuttoned. Some guy came up behind her and unhooked her bra. Another story of a guy who took M&Ms and he dumped them in the front pocket of a woman's blouse, and then he put his hand in there to grab them and whatever else he could grab. Kissing, hugging someone without their permission, or making unwanted sexual advances. I remember entering an evening event at the Annapolis Boat Show years ago. They were putting stickers on your jacket pretty much right around here after you paid the fee to get in. The stickers were, again, placed on the person's lapel. The guy who was putting them on stuck mine right in the middle of my breast. I was so pissed off, my Jersey girl came out at me. I looked at him and I said, "You pig," and I reactively took the sticker off my breast and I stuck it right on his crotch so he could see how insulting it was to me. Well, it honestly backfired. He loved it and he yelled, "Come back, come back." And the only thing I gained was clout with the 3 men that I was with that evening. They were quite impressed. Most likely, this man treated women like this all of the time. His reaction to me placing that sticker on his crotch made me realize that he had absolutely no clue how offensive his behavior was. I'm sure he had no desire to change. Regarding severe and pervasive, when talking about physical harassment, just one incident of rape, attempted rape, or sexual assault is considered severe and pervasive. It's important for all of you to know the difference between rape and sexual assault. Rape is when there is unwanted penetration into an orifice of the body. And again, it's without consent. It can be with a body part, such as the penis, a finger, or the tongue, or an object. And it can go into the mouth, vagina, or anus. Sexual assault is any unwanted sexual advance, touching, forced kissing, etc. Now, consent is when a person who is of clear mind, meaning not under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or mentally incapacitated, enthusiastically agrees to engage in intimate contact with another person. Now, let's discuss visual harassment. It could be posters of a sexual nature that make others feel uncomfortable. Drawings, pictures, screensavers, emails, or videos of a sexual nature. A coworker could take out their cell phone and pull up a video of porn and share it with someone else. The other people around them could be very uncomfortable. Perhaps someone can show it deliberately to make someone feel uncomfortable. That's harassment. I recently had a situation on social media which could have made a number of people feel uncomfortable. I posted something and a friend responded with a totally inappropriate porn photo in the comments section. I couldn't delete it. I immediately reached out and asked him to take care of it. Now, this is a good friend who I've known since I was 18 months old. He was devastated and he felt horrible. He must have been hacked. Luckily, he was able to take it down, but it wasn't easy for him to do so. So you never know where these things can appear. Now again, certain coworkers might not be offended by these things. You have to know who you can share them with, but it should be done privately and with sensitivity, so you are not offending others around you. It's best to ask for their permission before you show it. That shows respect for the other person. So now that you know what sexual harassment looks like and sounds like, reflect from time to time on your own behaviors. How do your behaviors affect others around you? Are your coworkers uncomfortable with things that you say and do? Now, some of you might be fine with your coworkers. Others, you might realize that you have to make adjustments. It's not easy to break old habits. Don't beat yourself up if it doesn't happen overnight. Change is a gradual process. As long as you are moving forward in a positive direction, that's a good thing. Also, it's crucial to consider the effects of alcohol on your communication and reasoning when you're drinking. You see, the body can only clear or break down 1 drink per hour. And when we consume more than 1 drink per hour, we're now flooding the brain with excessive alcohol, and we shut down one area of the brain after another. What's one alcoholic beverage? Well, I'm sure many of you know this since you are in the drink industry, but I'll share it. It's 5 ounces of wine, 1.5 ounces of hard liquor, and 12 ounces of beer. As we are flooding the brain with this excess alcohol, the first area to shut down is the prefrontal cortex, and it's here behind our forehead. It controls our higher rational thinking, so we diminish that. We lose our impulse control, long-term planning, executive functioning, and controlling emotions. So this could lead to scenarios where you might have not planned for. Nothing worse than waking up the next day saying, "Oh shit, what did I do last night?" The safest way to drink? No more than 1 alcoholic beverage an hour, and you alternate it with a non-alcoholic beverage. So you're giving the brain a chance to clear out the excess alcohol, and you rehydrate the body and the brain. You see, dehydration of the body and the brain is what causes the hangovers. So remember, it's so much different to catch a light buzz than to get really wasted. Now, I'm going to share some effective strategies to help you communicate more openly and to keep your working relationships healthy. Effective and respectful communication skills lead to keeping your establishment productive, happy, and profitable. If someone is intimately interested in a fellow employee, he or she should express it in an open and respectful way. It should be as simple as saying, "I would love to spend time with you outside of work. Would you like to grab a bite to eat or get together one day when we're off?" If you hear a yes, that's great. If you hear a no, be respectful of that and say, "I appreciate your honesty. I know that's not easy." Now, sometimes sexual tension gradually builds over time, and both people feel it. I remember a time in college where I had this guy in my class. It was a summer course, and the tension was building for weeks. And finally, one day, we were out in the parking lot, and we kissed. Well, that was one of the worst kisses that I ever experienced. Obviously, my interest was no longer there. There was no chemistry. And I pulled away after that day. And he recognized the change in the way that I related to him, and eventually he asked about it. I can't remember specifically if I told him he was a lousy kisser. I doubt it because I'm kind. I probably said that the chemistry was not there. I do remember that there was sensitivity on my part. So we should try our best to be kind unless the person is a complete jerk. Now, I did not want to hurt his feelings by being too tough on him. Plus, I wanted to keep the friendship intact. You see, there's that fine line of crossing over from a friendship into a more intimate relationship. If things don't work out, how do you preserve the friendship? Will it ever be the same? There have been occasions where I did not allow a friendship to progress towards an intimate relationship because I valued that friendship so much. I did not want to jeopardize that. So it's something that you need to evaluate. Put a lot of thought into it. Now, if things go well with a coworker and a more intimate relationship develops, you need to be sensitive to others around you and to the fact that you have a responsibility to the establishment that you are working for. In the beginning of the relationship, there's a lot of excitement. We often push others out of our psyche as we narrow our focus more on one another. You might have other coworkers who you've been friends with, and they might be hurt as you are pulling away. It's important to not do that because you are working together as a team to serve your customers and your establishment that you're working for. Save that deep focus on one another for outside of work. Don't get distracted with the relationship or sexual tension. Don't go in the back for a quick sexual encounter. Stay focused on your work and the healthy relationships with the people around you. Now, what happens when you're in an intimate relationship with a coworker and you're having a bad day? Well, perhaps you had a big fight before your shift, or you had a bad weekend together. Leave that outside of work. We see couples who are pissed at each other, and one might say, well, I'm not going to do that because that person I'm pissed at them. I don't want to work over in their area because I don't even want to look at their face. Now again, your responsibility, first and foremost, is to your work and to your fellow employees. Leave the tension and the personal drama at the door. It's not fair to others around you. If you are a supervisor, you have to do your best to keep your staff happy. If two of your employees are in a relationship and they are not getting along, it's best to assign them to different areas in your establishment. That is, if your establishment is big enough to keep them separated. Talk to them and let them know how their behavior is affecting everyone around them, both staff and customers. We also see scenarios where a supervisor or manager becomes intimately involved with an employee that's under them. No pun intended. This can be a tricky situation. First of all, it's important for the supervisor to not show favoritism through prioritizing their partner's schedule, letting he or she go home early, giving frequent raises, advancement without merit, or going light on day-to-day responsibilities. It's also crucial for the subordinate not to expect or demand to be treated more favorably than anyone else. That only builds resentment and fractures the team. If the person is an exemplary employee, that's one thing. If you're a supervisor, step back from time to time and ask yourself, if you were not in a relationship with this person, would you be treating them differently? It's important to evaluate that from time to time. Now, what happens if you are fighting? Again, leave it at the door. That's your private business, and you should not bring that tension into work. It creates a distraction and tension for everyone else, both employees and customers. The bottom line is, if you are in an intimate relationship with a coworker, no matter what their status is, you need to exercise sensitivity for the people around you and keep your personal drama outside of work. If your supervisor or manager is showing unfair preferential treatment to one of your coworkers that he or she is dating, you can talk to other coworkers to see if they feel the same about the situation. If they agree and feel resentful as well, perhaps you alone can represent the group, or a few of you can ask to meet with your supervisor and respectfully express your feelings. Don't gang up or be nasty, because that could lead to the person feeling defensive. Again, being open and honest can go a long way. The key to any healthy relationship is effective communication. Communication is 60% nonverbal, and that's why I go crazy when I see so many people texting all of the time. You lose expression, intonation in voice, and body language. There's no back and forth to immediately clear things up. I see so many misunderstandings that occur because people are texting or they're emailing. People are losing their verbal communication skills, which have been steadily declining over the past 10 years. So think about how others perceive you when you're communicating nonverbally. Smile. Keep your arms uncrossed. It looks more open and inviting. And watch your posture. Maintain eye contact, but don't bore into them, making them feel uncomfortable. Put your devices away. It shows respect and that you're giving that person your undivided attention. To be a good communicator, you must be a good listener first. We spend 10% of our time listening and 90% formulating a response. So you lose important details because you are not listening to what is being said. I know I do it. Again, key information is missed. Now, also, know your audience. We have different relationships with people around us. Adjust your communication skills accordingly. You might talk to your supervisor, your customers, your coworkers very differently, and that's appropriate. Remember, the message sent isn't always the message received. Not everything comes out the way we intend it, and we make incorrect assumptions, or things get lost in the tech translation with text messages or emails. We might incorrectly determine a certain tone of voice when there is none. When you encounter a situation like that, ask for verbal clarification. It usually clears the air right away. Be concise and clear in what you are asking for or what your expectations are. I think it's truly an art to say a lot in a few words. So let's talk about conflict resolution. It's important to diffuse certain situations with an intimate partner or, for that fact, a coworker before they escalate. We have to work on our relationships to keep them healthy. They always take work. First of all, learn to talk openly and honestly about your feelings. It's healthy to show a sensitive side and to express exactly how you are feeling. Be kind as you are sharing your thoughts and use the power of reasoning to effectively communicate. If someone asks you out and you are not interested, again, be honest and don't lead them on. You can say that you are sorry, but you don't have the same feelings and you prefer to remain friends. Or you can say that you value your friendship and you don't want to jeopardize that. If you're in an intimate relationship and things are getting tense at work, it might be best to say, "Can we discuss this after our shift? I don't want to introduce our tension and drama to those around us. I need to focus on my work and I want to give you my undivided attention as well as we discuss this." It's also important not to hold grudges against others. That just builds resentment. And watch how alcohol can affect our communication with one another. When we climb over 0.05 blood alcohol level, we experience chemical changes in the brain that leads to changes in our personalities, and it's generally not for the better. And this is why we see increased violence after people have had a few drinks. If you start to discuss something and the conversation becomes heated because you've been drinking, it's best to say, "You know what? Let's talk about this tomorrow when we are both thinking a little bit more clearly." And sometimes, when we are under the influence, things come out of our mouth that we might not otherwise say. And once those words part your lips, you can't take them back. So it's best to come back and discuss the issue with a clear mind. If you can't gain control of your anger, walk away and cool off before returning to the situation. Breathe deep. Count to 10. Count to 200 if you need to. Never get physical by pushing, shoving, or holding someone's hands or arms. Always find the tools to defer a physical response. Also, don't let things fester and build up. It's best to clear the air right away through open and honest conversations. Couples who don't discuss their issues in a timely manner can start to resent one another over the years. Again, relationships take work, or should I say, need maintenance. My husband and I have been together for 34 years. We get things off our chest immediately. But most importantly, we move on. Don't resort to name calling like, "You're a bitch," because that doesn't get you anywhere. It will only piss the person off. Instead, express how the actions of that other person affected you. For example, you should say, "When you said this to me, it upset me because blah, 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 blah." It creates a greater understanding of your feelings and where you are coming from. That leads to more opportunities for conflict resolution. If a coworker or someone you're in a relationship with ridicules you or calls you name, set the boundaries by telling them, "Stop." If they don't, walk away while saying to them, "I will not have this discussion while I'm being treated like this." You will be ready to talk again when they can address you in a civil manner. Find the real issue. Typically, arguments happen when one person wants or needs are not being met. Try to get to the heart of the matter through that open communication. If your partner seems needy, maybe they're just feeling insecure and they need your encouragement. Sometimes we need to agree to disagree. If you and your partner can't resolve an issue, sometimes it's best to drop it. You can't agree on everything. Focus on what matters. Compromise when possible. It's easy to say, but it can be really hard to do. Compromising is a major part of conflict resolution in any successful relationship. It's important to find that middle ground that can allow for both of you to feel satisfied with the final outcome. So I spoke earlier of what you should do if a coworker asks you out and you aren't interested. What should you do if they don't take no for an answer and harass you by constantly asking you out, treating you poorly at work, saying inappropriate things, or engaging in other behaviors like stalking? It's best to tell the person one time how their actions are affecting you. Share your feelings openly and honestly. Tell them everything. Do you dread coming to work? Are you experiencing stress, anxiety, or depression? How is this behavior affecting your coworkers, your customers? Lay it all out there. Also, document the pattern of behavior. You want a record of the dates, the times, and the things that were said. Are there any witnesses? Are they willing to come forward? Do they have documentation? Speaking of witnesses, coworkers should advocate for one another with confidentiality and respect. This is all part of what we call bystander intervention. A bystander is not the victim or the perpetrator, but it is the person who is observing the incident or series of incidents. And they have the ability to help stop the behavior by advocating for the victim, by calling the perpetrator out on their behavior. You see, harassment is often an issue of power and control. And when someone else calls the person out on their behavior, it takes the power away from them, which leads to a greater chance of behavioral changes. People respond to their peers. Sometimes people don't want to get involved in others' businesses. It's important to create awareness as to what behaviors are appropriate in your establishment so people can recognize potentially problematic behavior. Keep your eyes and your ears open. You want to create a sense of collective responsibility where the bystanders have the confidence to step in and take action. This will create a sense of empowerment which benefits everyone in the workplace. So, back to that coworker who is harassing you. Ask other coworkers who have witnessed the behavior if they would be willing to step forward with their observations. They should have your back. They should be making the same observations to report. How many times did they see the incident? Do they have a record of a specific date or time? So if you don't get anywhere after talking to that person once, the person who's harassing you, then the next step would be to report it to your supervisor. When reporting this to your supervisor, share the details through your documentation. Your supervisor should have your back. He or she have many options as to how to handle this situation. Your supervisor should make sure that you are not working in the same area as that harasser. You could be scheduled on different shifts when possible. And in extreme cases, the person that is doing the harassing could be terminated. If your supervisor does not take care of this matter, then you go above him or her and you take it to the manager or the owner of your establishment. Now, according to that attorney from the Bay Area that I mentioned earlier, in most sexual harassment cases that he has worked on in the restaurant and bar industry, the person who is being sued most often is typically the supervisor, who is not the harasser, but he knew of the accusations about the conduct and he did nothing to stop it. It is the responsibility of the establishment to respond to the complaints being levied to them and not to ignore them. Employees are more likely to engage in sexual harassment when they perceive that their employer accepts, ignores, or doesn't care about it. You need to make it clear to all employees and managers that sexual harassment will not be tolerated. Developing and enforcing anti-sexual harassment policies is a start. It's important to establish procedures for employees to file complaints and for managers to follow through to address these complaints fairly and consistently. Failing to protect employees from harassment from coworkers and customers can have negative legal implications. We have seen restaurant and bar establishments who have had to pony up tens and sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars because they were sued for ignoring the complaints. Don't forget, a high-profile sexual harassment claim can have a negative effect on a bar or restaurant's reputation. People might boycott an establishment after several employees make allegations of sexual harassment that were ignored. This is damaging for employee morale and overall health. The health implications that we see are increased stress, anxiety, depression, physical ailments, burnout, and high turnover. Also, people talk. You might learn that it's hard to replace help because others have spread the word that the atmosphere in your bar is quite toxic for the staff. Sometimes a person might experience retaliation because they filed a complaint against a coworker, manager, or supervisor. Headquartered in Washington, D.C. is the U.S. Equal Opportunity Commission, or EEOC. It's a federal agency responsible for enforcing federal laws that prohibit discrimination against employees or job applicants on the basis of their race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, disability, or genetic information. This discrimination applies to many types of work situations, from hiring to firing, promotions, harassment, training and benefits, and compensation. A person is legally protected through the EEOC against retaliation for filing a complaint at work. It is against the law. So there are many types of retaliation. A person could receive poor evaluations. They could have their work sabotaged. They could be denied a raise for a promotion, have their hours cut back, given a really bad schedule, or be fired. Many years ago, I was serving drinks at a seafood restaurant in West Palm Beach in Florida. They pooled the tips between the wait staff and the people who were serving drinks. And it wasn't divided fairly. And so we had a staff meeting one day, and I brought up the unfair distribution of the tips in a very calm way, not confrontational. And my boss immediately said, "We'll talk to you about this after the meeting, Elaine." After everyone left, this guy sat me down and he fired me. Now, I was a hard worker. I got along with the staff. We were like family. We partied together. We hung out together. We were good friends. The customers loved me. And they retaliated against me because they did not want anyone who they perceived to be a troublemaker, someone who had the courage to question their policies. Now, this is not related to sexual harassment, but it is an example of what retaliation looks like. At that time, I did not know about the laws that could have protected me. So how can bars eliminate the notion that harassment is simply part of the job? Set a standard of civility and promote a positive work environment. Host meetings to help create an awareness for your staff of the importance of respectful relationships. You want them to cooperate with one another so everyone feels valued and respected for who they are. Pay attention to one another by engaging in active listening skills so you can develop an understanding through empathy. Empathy goes a long way. Solve conflicts immediately and control your emotions. Importantly, appropriate contact is a must. Always be willing to take accountability and responsibility for your actions. Make it a priority to avoid any claims of sexual harassment. Prevention is always a lot easier than dealing with a lawsuit. It's less expensive and it preserves your reputation. Ultimately, your goal is to create an establishment where people are happy to hang out and they want to keep coming back. There's nothing like those regulars to sustain those profits. You want a staff that loves what they do because they are emotionally and physically safe and they feel valued and respected by your management and your coworkers. Together, you can create a family that loves to work towards the common goal as a team, and that is success for your business. Thank you. It was a pleasure to be with you today. I will be monitoring the chat for any questions, or feel free to reach out to me at elaine@elainepasqua.com.